Hey guys, how's it going? Caprain here. Today I'm going to give you guys another sponsored Marvel Future Fight video. Marvel Future Fight is one of the most amazing mobile games I've ever played. It's been my passion, it's been consuming all of my free time for the last few months, and while I started to play the game, didn't really truly understand every aspect of every character, of every game mode. Over the last few months, spending all my time getting really into games, as you guys know that I do, I am quite knowledgeable on the game, and most of my goals have progressed into the late game. Marvel Future Fight is an amazing game that has more complexity than I've ever seen, I think, in any game that I've played, and it's a mobile game. You have to understand though, it's a game that has been out for some time, and it is a game that rewards long-term play. So, you know, if you pick this game up today, you might be one of the best players on like whatever character you choose to develop, but you're not really going to get anywhere on day one. You're not really going to get anywhere on day two. You know, after maybe you complete the starting journey quests, you might get a decent character, might be able to explore the game modes, but certain game modes reward you for having very large rosters, and today I want to give you guys a highlight on the one that rewards the largest rosters. It's the Shadowlands. It's been my favorite game mode of Marvel Future Fight, and I think it really highlights the great things about the game. Before I get into that, I want to just show you guys quick progress on my account. I'm just nearing level 70 on my shield, which will allow me to equip Urus and actually have fairly competitive characters. I have many T2s, got Wolverine 60, finished the Strange Quest 60. I T2'd every single X-Men, including Beast. Beast is actually pretty beastly, and because he doesn't use the same tier 2 materials as all the other non-X-Men characters, I considered it a fairly cheap tier 2 character. I wasn't really needing the mats, and his passive gives him really good group buffs, as well as having the I believe the second best physical leadership in the game. Combine the two, I think he's actually the best physical leader, so very useful there. I got Coulson for support, which will allow me to do world bosses. I'm now working on World Boss Ultimate almost in all of them right now. A lot of people wonder, you know, when should you invest in a character in Marvel Future Fight? You should invest in a character if it helps you succeed in a game mode that you want to succeed in, and that's kind of the direction. Right now I'm currently working on getting Jean to 60. To do that, I have to get another like 1,000 random bios or so it's going to take me another week or so to do that. I've got many characters to 60, largely ones that were required for other quests or are required for some of the more flexible stages, the early stages in Shadowlands. Right now I'm planning on leveling Elsa and getting her tier 2 as well. She's a very good Fizz leader. She's one of the best speed heroes in the game. She fills the female role, and Shadowlands has these different role requirements that are sometimes a bit more difficult to fill. For instance, you know, Loki is a pretty good character, nothing really outstanding, but the fact that the uniform that I'm using changes up the skill set a little bit but makes Loki into a female. And because it's a female villain universal, it fills so many unusual roles. So, you know, you don't necessarily need the strongest characters, but it's good to have strong characters in each of the unique parts of the game for Shadowlands. Why do you want to do that? Well, in Shadowlands, you can't use a character on more than one level. Shadowlands now has 30 levels, and if you use, let's say, your strongest character, let's say Wolverine, you just want to smash that first stage, well, you can't use Wolverine on the second stage then, and can't use it on a third, can't use it on any other, and as a result, you're basically forced into difficulty based on your availability. So you saw I have about you know, a dozen tier 2 characters, working on a few more, and you know, for me, I have to use several suboptimal characters in at least the first half of Shadowlands, just so I can save my powerful characters, because with each stage the difficulty goes up. And when the difficulty goes up, it gets really, really challenging for some characters to compete on the DPS or the survivability requirements. Shadowlands has been a very interesting experience for me. In the first month of play, I really struggled to get past the first like 6 or 7 stages because I just didn't really have a deep roster. I worked on the X-Men because I really wanted Jean. I almost got Jean decked out right now. I have all the other X-Men tier 2, and they're the ones carrying my later stages, and after those basically first 4 to 5 weeks of play, I've developed my roster to actually be able to clear with many T1s into the high teens of Shadowlands. As the stages go up, they get a bit more challenging. I gotta pump out some of these characters. Since I really started and introduced you guys to the game through the X-Men, I thought I'd highlight the few stages that I did with them in last week's Shadowlands. I actually completed all 25 stages of Shadowlands, and then 2 weeks later they revamped Shadowlands. It's actually quite a bit more difficult right now, and there's 30 floors. Right now I'm on floor 29, so I'm almost done, but this week I wasn't quite able to do it. I think if I didn't get a bit unlucky, because there is some RNG in the requirements for each of the stages, on about floor like low 20s, I faced I had to get a universal villain, and I just didn't have a single one because I'd already used Loki, so I had to use Doctor Strange because Doctor Strange is the only character in the game who can debuff, who can remove the buff that basically gives damage immunity to all other types. So, you know, when a stage has a requirement, it's like you must use this. Doctor Strange can get around that because that requirement is a buff on each of your opponents that Doctor Strange can remove. So Doctor Strange is like the absolute best character in Shadowlands because of that flexibility, and he's also one of the best characters in the game right now. So I had to use him, and I really needed him in order to succeed in the later stages. So I got a bit unlucky, and I'm not as experienced in Shadowlands, certainly not in the new 30-stage Shadowlands, but I think in the coming weeks I might be able to hit stage 30, probably in about 2 weeks. I think I'd have to get very lucky to do it next week because I'm still working on a few tier 2 characters right now. I'm working on Elsa, as you saw, I'm working on Iron Fist, I'm working on Black Bolt, and you know, if they release any more characters, and maybe think about those as well. So I got the 25 the first week, then the new Shadowlands came out with the 30 stages, but way harder. I actually got to 25 again. I couldn't really get any further. But this week, in the clips you're watching right now, I made it reasonably far. I made it to 29. I didn't complete 29, but I completed 28 stages, and I'm actually very proud of that. The stages where the X-Men were used were pretty interesting. I didn't really get a chance to use Beast. He was kind of like my leftover guy. I was saving him for some of the later stages, but because of the slip-up with Doctor Strange, I didn't quite get to highlight Beast where I really wanted him. I used Storm on stage 20. Stage 20 is the first like really difficult entry mode. You face one of 3 full teams. You face like 3 guys, and then you have to beat them in 1 minute. And face 3 more guys. You have to beat those guys in 1 minute. But it's a team on team, so you can use multiple characters. But on stage 20, Tier 2 Storm is strong enough to handle her own, and I chose to play against the Asgardians. So you first phase, I don't really remember, but the second phase are the big 3. You have to beat up Loki, Thor, and Odin at the same time. And while Thor has lightning damage immunity, Storm doesn't have exclusively lightning damage. She has a few, like, I think they're physical attacks or something, maybe just plain energy attacks. So while Thor certainly gets it for the least damage, you can still overcome that stage because of her raw damage. Storm has extremely high damage, particularly at tier 2. Her survivability is a bit lacking, so you have to be very good about timing her skills, like honestly most characters in this game. You have to use her guard, which is kind of like a shield that blocks several hits, right before you use your 2 most damaging attacks on your number 5 and number 4, because those are not immunity frames. You generally get hit while you're using those. The powerful characters in Marvel Future Fight are often defined by their ability to become immune to damage, to have shields against damage that are lasting throughout the entire cooldown of the effect, or characters that have attacks that while they're performing these attacks are completely immune to everything, which are called iframes. Storm doesn't have too many great iframes, a lot of partial ones, and she's also pretty fragile, so she gets hit a lot, and you have to really time your shields properly right before your burst, and sometimes even best to kite around a little bit if you can't chain stun your opponents in your storms. I used Rogue on the following stage, on 21, against the Sister Grim Rumble. This is a particularly difficult one. Some of these characters have energy reflect. Reflect in this game can be a real killer, particularly in the high stages of Shadowlands. Rogue does a mix of physical and energy damage, and her attacks are pretty well rounded, so if you're facing a stage that has energy immunity or energy reflect or physical reflect, you can typically get around that because Rogue just, it's a speed character, but it feels like a combat character. She's very tanky and she does pretty high, just straight up damage. I think Rogue can probably be used for higher up stages, but sometimes when you get a good opportunity, stage 21, the type advantage, speed does extra damage against blast characters. I thought it was a pretty good fit, and after toying around with the reflect blunders, I ended up downing it fairly smoothly. I ended up using Cyclops on stage 24 against Rocket Raccoon. I expected Cyclops to have to face a more difficult encounter, but Rocket Raccoon has a really high amount of dodge, but Cyclops' tier 2 ability gives him 50% dodge ignore, so he's just a monster against any character that relies on dodge, and Rocket Raccoon is one of those characters. So usually Cyclops takes care of a much more difficult stage for me, as I'm sure he could have this week as well, but I didn't have another good option as I used up most of my decent characters, especially most of my decent speed characters, before stage 24. I actually never even remember facing Rocket Raccoon on stage 24 before, but again, the new Shadowlands mixed things up quite a bit. Cyclops in most game modes is a very varied character that requires exceptional timing. He has many iframes, but they're very short, and his last skill, his number 5, just does tremendous damage. It's a channel skill, and he's immune to damage for the first 4 seconds of it, which is about half the cooldown. So he does very well using that and cycling between his short iframes in most game modes, but in Shadowlands, because the characters are stunnable, they're CCable, his big number 5 attack, the channel, it usually just chain stuns the opponent. As you can see, it's kind of like a laughable attempt. Cyclops is really exceptional and really cheesy in Shadowlands. He's probably one of the must-haves for Shadowlands, in fact. I had to use both Wolverine and Magneto for stage 27. It's the Dormammu bunch, which some of them go like immune to energy, I believe, and then after that you have to face the Strange and the Ancient One, and I think it's Mordo. The issue that I have doing with Wolverine can do the Dormammu squad, not too hard actually, but when it comes to beating Doctor Strange, Wolverine does not do so well because he has the type disadvantage. Blast does extra and receives reduced damage from combat types, which is what Wolverine is. So after many attempts realizing that I just don't have the damage, when Wolverine is not fully built up, I haven't really fully built up any character because I don't really have much investment in Urus yet. But once I teamed him up with Magneto, played Magneto, put Wolverine on auto, because he's kind of like a face roll character when he can't get one-shot by anything, I ended up defeating the Dormammu wave pretty easily and moved on to the next, which was the biggest challenge, unfortunately. At the time of recording, as you can see, my Jean was 58, and the level difference made it so Jean, most of her attacks were just straight up dodged by the opponents. Even though she had the type advantage, even though Jean is one of the most powerful, if not probably the most powerful character in the game overall, they were just dodging the attacks like crazy because she was not level 60. Couldn't really get her level 60 because native tier 2s don't level up just by killing things. You have to feed them bios of other characters, and that's a big long-term investment. I think in about a week I'll have her level 60 and she should be able to do any stage in Shadowlands whatsoever, but yeah, I couldn't do it at 58. Things just dodged too much, and just earlier today, I wasn't really recording, I got her to 59. I had a few more bios from World Boss Co-op and decided just to give like one attempt. It was actually not too hard. It was pretty easy to do it at level 59. But yeah, I don't have any characters left, so I can't even attempt the next two stages in Shadowlands this week. But every week it's something I really look forward to, and you know, this game really surprised me. This game really showed me what's possible on the mobile platform in terms of depth, in terms of like account building RPG experience. I think more than any of the mobile games that I've played, it appealed to what I like in video games. So I thought I'd give you guys another look, give you guys another intro to the game, because if you guys are like me, I think you might enjoy this game quite a lot as well. If you think so, check it out. I got a link below for you guys, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.